Stoicism. Today, the word has been polished into something soft, a lifestyle brand, a string of Instagram quotes over beach sunsets, a modern cure-all for anxiety, the promise that if you just learn to accept what you can't control, you'll find peace. But what if I told you this is a lie? What if I told you that Stoicism wasn't born to make you calm, it was born to make you cold? The true Stoics were not self-help gurus. They weren't life coaches. They weren't TikTok influencers telling you to journal your feelings away. They were emperors commanding armies, slaves surviving torture, and philosophers navigating the razor-thin line between life and death in brutal times. And when they spoke of detachment, of calm, of indifference to pain, it wasn't to live happier lives, it was to live stronger ones, harder ones. It was to strip away weakness until all that was left was control. Stoicism was never about peace, it was about power. To understand this dark edge, we need to go back to its origins. The founder, Zeno of Citium, was shipwrecked, literally. His fortune gone, stranded in Athens with nothing. From disaster, he built a philosophy not of comfort, but of survival. He taught in the marketplace, surrounded by chaos, preaching that life itself could never be trusted. Fortune rises, fortune falls. The only constant is your own mind. That's where Stoicism comes from, not peace but ruin, not tranquility but catastrophe. The Stoic doesn't seek serenity because the world is calm. The Stoic seeks serenity because the world is merciless. The Stoic lessons that survive today are the safe ones. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Focus on virtue. Be indifferent to pleasure and pain. It sounds harmless, even wholesome. Marcus Aurelius telling us to stay humble. Seneca telling us to meditate on death. Epictetus telling us not to be disturbed by insults. But this surface layer is a half-truth, a mask, because the ancient world wasn't posting motivational quotes. The ancient world was tearing itself apart with wars, slavery, assassinations, and disease. In that world, Stoicism wasn't just philosophy, it was armor. When you look deeper, you see it. Stoicism wasn't practiced to feel good, it was practiced to endure the unbearable. Take Marcus Aurelius, the last good emperor, the philosopher king. His meditations are held up as a book of wisdom for all ages. But do you know when he wrote them? On the front lines of war, with plague decimating Rome, betrayal eating away at the Senate, and his empire on the brink. When Marcus writes to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," it wasn't inspiration. It was survival. He was reminding himself not to collapse when everything around him did. This was Stoicism as cold steel. Case Study 1. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Endurance. Imagine it. You are the ruler of the greatest empire the world has ever seen, but your reign is cursed. Plague sweeps across your cities, killing millions. Barbarians surge across your borders. Your generals betray you. Even your own son is weak, spoiled, unfit to rule. Every day you wake up, and the weight of an empire sits on your shoulders. Every night you lie down, knowing tomorrow will bring more blood. Marcus Aurelius didn't use Stoicism to feel peace. He used it to keep from going mad. He wrote to himself, "Erase impressions, stop being dragged around. You are a soul carrying a corpse that is not comfort, that is control." And through that control he endured. He held Rome together for decades, not with joy, not with peace, but with iron. Case Study 2. Seneca, the manipulative philosopher. Then there's Seneca. People love to quote him. His writings are elegant, sharp, and endlessly quotable, but few mention the other side of his life. Seneca was no humble sage. He was a power broker, a tutor and advisor to the young Nero, a man who preached detachment from wealth while hoarding a fortune that rivaled Rome's richest men, a man who maneuvered through political conspiracies with ruthless calculation. When his enemies finally closed in, when Nero ordered him to take his own life, Seneca did not rage. He did not weep. He slit his veins calmly, as if performing an experiment in detachment. Stoicism wasn't a philosophy he taught. It was a mask he wore, a shield he used until his final breath. This wasn't about virtue. It was about survival in a world where mercy did not exist. Case Study 3, Epictetus, the slave who owned himself. And then there is Epictetus, born a slave, crippled by abuse. He owned nothing, not even his own body. Yet he became one of the greatest Stoic teachers. His philosophy was forged not in wealth or power, but in chains. His master could beat him, starve him, torture him. But Epictetus taught himself one thing: his mind was untouchable. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. This was not an Instagram quote. This was a man in shackles, refusing to let his soul be broken. Epictetus shows us the most brutal truth. Stoicism was never about comfort. It was about rebellion, the cold rebellion of the powerless who refuse to surrender. Look at all three, and the pattern emerges. Marcus, Seneca, Epictetus. Emperor, politician, slave. Different lives, same philosophy. Why? Because Stoicism does one thing better than any other system. It gives you control. Control over fear. Control over pain. Control over grief. But here's the catch. That control is not kind. It's not compassionate. It doesn't make you more human. It makes you less. To survive as a Stoic, you must kill parts of yourself. Empathy, attachment, desire. You must strip it away until nothing remains but cold clarity. That is why emperors loved it. That is why soldiers lived by it. That is why slaves clung to it. Because in a world of chaos, Stoicism gave them the one weapon no one could take: mastery over themselves. So, what does this mean for us today? Why should you care about philosophy from 2,000 years ago? Because the world hasn't changed as much as you think. Your enemies may not carry swords, but they will still betray you. Your wars may not be fought with spears, but competition in business, politics, and life is still war. If you live by the soft version of Stoicism, the Instagram version, you'll crumble when real pressure comes. But if you embrace the cold Stoicism of Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus, you gain an edge no one can match. When you lose money, you don't panic. When you're betrayed, you don't collapse. When everything falls apart, you stand. And in that moment, you will be more dangerous than anyone around you. So let's be clear. Stoicism is not about peace. It is about power. It is not about happiness. It is about hardness. It is not about becoming calm. It is about becoming untouchable. The Stoics were not saints. They were survivors. They were rulers. They were manipulators. They were slaves who refused to be broken. And the philosophy they left behind is not therapy. It is not comfort. It is not soft. It is a blade, a shield, a fortress of the mind. So the next time you see a Stoic quote on your feed, ask yourself, are you reading a gentle truth or a dangerous one? Because Stoicism is not about calming the storm. Stoicism is about becoming the storm.